Bernie,
40%.
right, but if Bernie, see, why Hillary won, besides all the shenanigans, was she just clobbered him in these big delegate states. So Biden can't clobber him in these big delegate states, and either no one's going to have enough first delegates, or Bernie's going to have. And to me, if Biden either loses in California or Texas tonight, I mean, Obama's going to come in behind the scenes and have him out so that everybody can consolidate around Bloomberg. Because all these moderates are basically siphoning off each other's votes. I mean, honestly, nobody's taking votes right now from Biden. Biden's gone down in national polls as Bloomberg has gone up. The Biden vote is going to Bloomberg, which I love. Biden or Bloomberg? Because they're all, I mean, Michael Bloomberg is a classic narcissist who thinks the country will love him. If I'm a Bernie person, I'd much rather run against Michael Bloomberg. At least well,
He doesn't
now
have
that
the name
Biden's brain is discombobulated.
No, but there's an uphill battle in like black communities with Biden because they just see him as Obama's VP. Like,
Who's the default?
Right, but Bloomberg, I mean, he's stopping first. He's charisma of a snail.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, get him on the debate stage. He hasn't even been on the debate stage. And all Bernie has to say is like, I'm not the billionaire running. Like, it's just going to be immediately apparent. Yeah, fuck that guy.
So,
I think I agree with you.
yeah, I've been thinking about trying to go towards like a more rural conservative area that's not 2.5 hours away.
Here, we're going to Boone.
How far is that? Okay. Yeah, I want to,
About 15 minutes.
does it lean more moderate conservative?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just know it's really rural and hard to do.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to,
April would be,
what's that?
April would be the first week introduced.
Tell me better. I stupidly tweeted out, like, hey, email me Hey, it's Jordan. I am live Des Moines, Iowa, where we are 3 days away from the caucus, and don't pay attention to our graphic. This shows you what happens when you have no budget and you have no real staff. A little typo on our graphic, but it's okay. Iowa caucus 3 days from now. We got here yesterday, and already we are seeing, just from volunteers, activists on the ground, a lot of energy. I mean, I was here in 2016 covering Bernie Sanders' campaign. Obviously, there was energy, but it's really like a different wavelength this time, I guess is the best way to describe it, because it's an energy of, instead of being like a massive underdog, it's an energy of like, wait a minute, things seem to be actually possible here for victory. So a lot of events coming up today, a lot of events coming up the next few days here. Hopefully I'll be able to have a conversation with middle-class Joe Biden. I plan on going to one of his events, either today or tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. But I am joined by Emily Jones, Emily Connor and Jeremy White. Emily coming up to volunteer for Bernie's campaign from Texas. Jeremy coming from California, Los Angeles, where it's a lot colder here than both of those places. You both are kind of OGs from 2016's campaign. We've interviewed before. You did Bernie's coffee shop in Los Angeles, which is what is super popular, and you volunteered in 2016, and since then, like a lot of people who volunteered nationally, have done a lot of things locally, both in Indiana and in Texas. So I want to talk to volunteers because I can't get everywhere. Tell us about like what parts of Iowa have you been knocking on doors? What are the responses you've been getting? Because the media kind of made it seem like Warren has like the most staff here, the biggest ground game, the biggest infrastructure, just like they made it seem like Warren is, equal in her progressive credentials. I can't speak to Warren's ground game here, but I can speak to Bernie's, and it seems to me Obama 2008 levels.
Yeah, similar energy for sure. I've been canvassing in the Council Bluffs area, staying with a friend over in Omaha, not too far from that area, and I can't say I've really seen I haven't gotten too many responses where someone was like, I'm voting for Elizabeth Warren. I got a handful of Pete people, actually, in one neighborhood, and even they didn't seem super enthused. They were kind of like, I kind of like Pete, and, I'd ask, is there an issue that's important to you? And it'd be like, no, I just kind of think he sounds good. And which brought to mind, like, I remember reading a poll a while back that said in Iowa, I think like a good 50% of declared Pete voters did not say they were enthusiastic about it, and they asked the follow-up question. So that's pretty much what I'm seeing here as well. Basically, anyone under a certain age that I would get knew about Bernie. We're totally ready to go. Yep, we're bringing the whole household. We know our caucus location. We're on the same page. So that's been really good to see. And then we were hitting our goals in Council Bluffs, and they were sending us further afield. I was in Harrington County the other day, which was really rural. That was a different experience. Sad to see a lot more apathy out there. I was really having to make the case to some of these people that like, this will change your life. There's no way that there is nothing on this platform that will affect your life. We're talking healthcare, eradicating student debt, raising wages, jobs, everything. And it's sad. It's just, it's hard to reach some people that this is the campaign that would affect you and it would help you in so many ways. But yeah, and then so we're heading out. Jeremy and I are heading out to Boone later, connecting with another organizer out there, and they said same thing. They need more people to cover the rural turfs, but in town in Council Bluffs, we were really our ground game was incredible. We kept hitting, like I said, our goals, and so I don't know. Did you want to?
And remember, press the like button. The more people that press the thumbs up button under the live stream, the more people that will see it. YouTube likes to hide us in a cave, so you could help press the thumbs up button. You said apathy, so what are like some responses you've gotten from people that either are like no to Bernie or no just period? Oh,
yeah. I mean, not voting. I don't do that. I don't get into, I'm not a politics person. I don't, rolling eyes, stuff like that. Which, like, I actually kind of like when I get those people because it's easy for me. Then I'll go off script. I'll just be like, you know what? I got you. I wasn't either. I wasn't raised in a liberal household. I thought politics was bullshit too. This guy's different. This is historically unprecedented. Here are all the reasons why. This guy's hated by both political establishments. You know, all the things that you feel are, you know, bull. Yes, you're right about those things. That's exactly what we're trying to change. And we're trying to get someone in who's coming in to completely change the way, you know, the whole paradigm of the way politics is done. And I have actually had some success. There was a guy I got the other day who was an independent, registered independent, and told me he was not going to vote. Everyone sucked, you know. And by the end of our brief conversation, I had him interested, and he was looking over Bernie stuff, and he was listening to me about like where to go to caucus and everything. And so that's been nice. And I've also been telling people, you know, even if they say, okay, I'm voting for Pete or Warren or somebody, a lot of people here don't know that if their candidate doesn't reach viability, they will have a second choice or a chance to caucus for a second choice candidate. And so I've kind of used that to sort of create a little context where I can still get in a plug for Bernie, but they don't have to be defensive about it because I'm not trying to change their mind. You know, I'll be like, okay, that's great. Thanks for participating in democracy. Yeah, we got to get Trump out. Just so you know, if your candidate does not, you know, reach viability, you'll have a chance for your vote to still count. That's so cool. You can do that here. We don't get to do that in my state, you know. And then you get to ask them, you know, what issues are important to you? Why do you like Pete or Warren or whoever? And then that informs me, like, what can I tell you about Bernie Sanders that maybe you didn't know and you hadn't heard? And so I've been kind of working with that, but.
I'm coming to you next. I just want to make a point. I could never do this because if people said to me, like, let's say, like, I like Pete, you know, he sounds like he is really going to unite us. I'd just be like,
He's so smart.
The guy's full of I couldn't hold myself back from saying, well, the guy's kind of full of Right. So, like, the fact that you guys have to, like, be on message, be positive, all those things, I give you credit because obviously when you're having personal conversations among fellow Burners, you're able to speak a little bit more freely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. You have to not act like you would on Facebook when you're out canvassing. You don't score points for dunking on people for not believing your beliefs. So, no, it's you catch more flies with honey, and definitely I'm seeing that out here. I have yet to canvass yet. We're going out today, so I will see how it goes. But it's definitely like the most effective way to get out and talk to voters. I have a lot of social anxiety, so it's like, for me, having to come out of my shell to go and do that. But I'm always inspired by people like Emily, like driving across the country to come and knock doors in a state that she's not connected to personally. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, we're seeing that all over. I am looking forward to going out and seeing firsthand how the people in this state, what connects with them personally, and then start gearing the message towards that. And you know, there was a guy this morning, we were at breakfast with Jane at this little like small business meeting. And there was a guy who was like a Reagan Republican, voted Libertarian last election, who was just giving really great pointers on how to connect with kind of more rural or Republican or conservative voters. And it's just about like you can speak on this a little more, connecting on their level by reframing Bernie's policies to meet them on their playing field. Like talk about fiscal conservative, you know, like being fiscally conservative. Talk about the jobs that the Green New Deal is going to bring in. Like that's definitely a big way to connect with them. And you know.
Have you heard any? They're going to kill my cows because that's what Trump said. Trump, if you don't know, was here last night, which is the ultimate troll move. I mean, I have to give it to him. He's very good at marketing and trolling. So he came to Iowa, and I didn't go cover it because I was on no sleep. But he basically said, you know, Democrats are going to kill your cows and the usual spiel. And
Take your guns and then use them to kill your cows.
Right. They're going to take your guns and use them. And it was funny because I met when we got dinner last night. There was a Trump wearing had a Trump hat on and a Trump shirt. He was actually a nice guy. He bought me a beer. But I was talking to the waitress, and he overheard, and he was saying, "Oh, Trump would crush Bernie," and I made him a bet that I thought the opposite. And like, I'll come back to Iowa, he'll come to New York, but you could tell this is Fox News country. Like a lot of areas are Fox News country. So in the context of a Democratic primary, you really do have to kind of pivot the discussion or like you said, reframe it to why, oh no, actually what Bernie's proposing is the responsible economic thing, or You've been getting positive responses when you do that with more rural supporters?
Yeah, I was just talking to Jeremy in the car because somebody at Jane's breakfast event raised the same question, which is like, how do you get through to Republicans who have been hearing these talking points? And the thing is, like, Bernie's policies aren't just, humane and compassionate. They're fiscally efficient. They eliminate waste. They're, and when you frame things like this, like, I grew up in a Republican household. So, I remember kind of the criticisms that Democrats would get and sort of the way they were viewed as being like wasteful or naive. And so it really does help if you kind of put these policy proposals in terms that Republicans respond to. This is a return on your investment. You pay taxes. Don't you want to get something back for them? This is investing in our country, because America first, all that, but it does help. Why should we be paying for, forever wars overseas or cutting huge tax breaks to billionaires and corporations when we could be investing in our own infrastructure and education and healthcare? And like, don't you want to be the greatest country there is, So some of that kind of thing, like I'm trying to remember like what made sense to me when I was first investigating Bernie coming from a more conservative worldview. And that did, like, his mayoral history. He got into Burlington and he redid the budget, found money they didn't know they had. He bid out the insurance contracts to save the city money. He bartered the cable rates down, I believe, and got like seniors for cable and stuff. But like, he impressed the Republican business owning community there so much that they were willing to work with him. They were like, no, we're good. They actually started voting for him after a few elections because they were like, he's responsible. He knows what he's doing. He's not wasteful. He's really, he's considerate. Which Jane was making kind of the same case this morning because she was talking to small business owners and saying, like, this is something Bernie's very familiar with and that he's always supported. He's not anti-business, he's anti-exploitation and gentrification that just displaces people. And we're not gonna balance the budget on the backs of low-income and working people. That's not how our priorities should be aligned. But yeah.
And remember, press the like button. Also, this is a super chat if you're feeling super 3 days away from the Iowa caucus. I wanted to point something out because Elizabeth Warren, for example, this is how it works. Consultants give you lines to say during the debate. But she made this point that was just factually incorrect, that I'm the only person here who beat a Republican in the last 30 years. And Amy Klobuchar has also been incorrectly making it seem like she is uniquely capable of winning in Midwest states that aren't necessarily Democrat. The last time a Republican won the presidency in Minnesota, Richard Nixon. It's a Democratic state, Minnesota. She's not doing anything special. Bernie Sanders won in Vermont to become a congressman in 1990. In 1988, Papa George Bush won Vermont. Vermont was a Republican state for quite some time. Bernie Sanders' electoral history in Vermont, he has tended to win rural conservative areas because, as I always say, a lot of Republicans are closet progressives. They just are being brainwashed. So when you talk to them in that language, so I want to get on that. Do you think that's why? I mean, we recently heard an audio, Donald Trump was on hot tape. The media only focused on the fact that, he said something about Ukraine, but he also was having a conversation with Lev Parnas and said, the only person I didn't want Hillary Clinton to pick as vice president was Bernie Sanders. He was scared of Sanders because of the trade issue, which, contrary to what they say, it wasn't Putin that won him Ohio and Michigan. It was trade. So do you get any of those concerns, people you're knocking on doors? I know you haven't yet, among people, worried about their jobs being offshored or these kinds of things?
Go ahead. I can't speak from experience on that yet. So.
I've not heard anyone bring up trade specifically yet, but that could just be the areas that I've been focused in. But I mean, this is farming country, in addition to the trade issue that you definitely hear more about, especially in areas like certain parts of Wisconsin, Detroit, et cetera, where the auto industry got, shipped to other countries. Like, this is, like, Bernie's the only one with like a solid plan to combat big ag and the monopolies that have been starving the family farms. Jane just mentioned, or somebody did at the breakfast, that they came out here in a bus a while ago and they were going around to these farms and talking to them, and like, that's Bernie's bread and butter. Vermont is dairy farm country. The reason the Republicans vote for him there is because he's been to every single farm practically, gone in there, sat down at the kitchen table, said, tell me about your problems. And for someone who's, this kid from Brooklyn who shows up in Vermont, like for him to have won over those farmers' trust is like, it really speaks to how much effort he's put in. Like they cut an ad, I think it wasn't too long ago. And there's a farmer in Vermont speaking about it. And he said he might be not from here, but he knows the ground that I've inherited from my family and that I've worked for all these years. And so it's right up Bernie's alley. This is these kind of small kitchen table bread and butter issues have been the ones that won him the support of the state of Vermont, and which was a Republican state. A lot of people don't really appreciate that. He more or less turned a state blue. At coming, a Jewish socialist in Reagan America to a red state, with both party establishments against him. We were just discussing this, for him to have thought about how to understand these people's problems and their pain and to appeal to them in a way that the political establishment there was not, and to have won over, for the city and then eventually the whole state to that extent. I mean, we're going to say this guy can't, win rural or red states. I mean, he's already within 3 points of Trump in Texas.
Last time, Nebraska.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last time there was such a huge show of support. I have a lot of friends in Nebraska, a lot of family in Kansas. Huge support for him in those states. He all but tied for Iowa, except for the magic coin. It's insane to say that he doesn't have support in these kind of areas. These are exactly the kind of areas that know what a Bernie Sanders presidency would bring for them, and we just have to connect with those voters, and that's what we're doing out here, is just getting that one-on-one contact. But they're feeling it. They feel the economic hardships. They feel their jobs leaving, factories leaving. I mean, it's really important to them out here. So. Yeah, just connect on that level and just be positive and embody what this movement, this revolution is really about, is humanity and making sure that we're all at the table. And yeah, I don't see how they can fight that at the end of the day.
So I want to turn to Joe Biden. Turn the camera. Yeah. So Joe Biden. I mean, it's like an ongoing Saturday Night Live skit, but it's not a skit. Joe Biden, I've been covering this for a while, just like politics, and I've never actually seen a candidate. The press asked Joe Biden a question yesterday about Social Security, which polls show are voters are starting to flee Joe Biden, older voters, which, let me tell you something, if Bernie Sanders, obviously he's got the youth on lock. If he starts even competing among the 45 and older crowd, that's it. It's over. So a reporter, I think from CBS, asked Joe Biden a question on Social Security, and it's like his campaign has literally put a gag order on him. The campaign, it's like, Sonny, don't say anything, wait for us to pick you up. Hand them this piece of paper. So he's handing the reporters talking points. I don't have the sheet. I saw it on Twitter listing what he has said about Social Security. Of course, they leave out him calling for freezes, him calling for raising the retirement age, him calling for means testing. That's not even getting to welfare reform in 1996. So basically, when 3 days before Iowa, you have one campaign that has a lot of energy. I mean, even at like little coffee, like circular coffee things in the morning with Jane, it seems to me there's just as many people at those things than at like actual events with Biden himself. Like Bernie's not there. Bernie's on jury duty, impeachment hearing going on. So to me, how is he going to win Iowa or just be the most electable if his campaign, if in response to, frankly, mild attacks from Bernie Sanders, not even close to what he would get from Trump, his campaign is cutting him off from speaking. I'm handing you pieces of paper with my talking points that aren't even real. And when actual voters approach him, I'm not saying he's doing anything violent, but he certainly doesn't understand boundaries with men or women. A couple days ago with somebody who was expressing no more pipelines, he got up in his face. Biden got up in his face, touched his jacket. Yesterday with an African-American male, Biden touched his jacket again. And it's just this, I feel like he's a candidate running in 1990 instead of 20 2020. Your thoughts? Oh, and I should say, I should have started the live stream. A new NBC national poll just came out this morning. You know, I take polls with a grain of salt because a lot of them oversample older people, undersample younger people. However, the preponderance of polls now, this is the first time Bernie in an NBC Wall Street Journal poll is leading. It's within the margin of error, which is 4 points, but he's leading. He's at 27, Biden's at 26. Warren, after stabbing Bernie in the front, is all the way down. So there's obviously something going on here. It's not just young people, it's older people, too, going to Bernie. What do you see? We were talking before, there's not a lot of people outside Biden headquarters. You don't see much energy around here for Biden. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I've driven by the Biden office in Council Bluffs a few times. There's never any cars outside, and there's always people coming and going from the Bernie office. It's, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. What is the strategy for a candidate that can't hold a conversation with a voter for 5 minutes without losing composure, getting inappropriate, like you said, violating social boundaries, and having to hand over? What's he going to do when Trump attacks him? Hand over statements from his campaign? I mean,
He'll fax you. Send a fax.
He'll fax you. And then recently we've been seeing headlines about, apparently it has finally trickled down to Biden that Bernie supporters are rather effective at defending him and promoting him online, and he wants a piece of that action. He wants some bros of his own now, so he's asking for his supporters to go online and defend him in a similar manner. So we've been having a little bit of fun with that concept.
They don't know what a PDF is, or
they need someone to help them open a PDF, but yeah, they're gonna release some counter malarkey. They're going to put someone on the meme development.
And we've seen memes from the opposition. The opposition memes generally are just terrible. You know, the Warren Buttigieg memes are cringe times 1,000. It's like Michael Scott level stuff. Biden is like the embodiment of white male class privilege, and he has this arrogant attitude like he just is owed this, and that didn't go well last time. This concept of it's his turn, or he deserves it because of this or that, like it's not going to resonate with the voters. Anybody who's actually paying attention to the candidates and the issues is very much fleeing that that ship. So I think that's going to continue to happen. I don't see him improving in any way. He's only getting worse and worse. He's basically verbally and physically assaulting people who have anything to say to him, and like how can you how can you hide that for very long? It's going to be more and more exposed. He taps people on the chest, calls them names. I mean, that's the kind of shit that they say they hate about Trump, but they're willing to give him a pass. So we have to really shine a light on the differences between the campaigns, and I don't think it's going to be hard to do at all. No.
I just want to say real quick, I mean, you brought up an excellent point. In so many ways, it's almost ironic how, maybe it's karmic, that all of these criticisms that the Democratic Party has been using against Trump for 4 years, they're all right there in Joe Biden. He's the blue version of Trump. He's inappropriate. He says horrible things about, to and about women. He sniffs women, apparently. He's Trump in with a little blue. And as a woman particularly, there was a video that came out the other day. There was a young woman asking him about climate. I believe she was with maybe Sunrise Movement or something like that. But asking him, why are you so weak on climate? Don't you take this seriously? Why can we trust you when your record is what it is? What about I forget who is the woman who works for him who's taken like $1 million from the fracking industry or something like that?
Oh yeah, one of his advisors.
Yeah. And he had nothing. He looked angry. He was gripping both of her hands in his fists, and he wouldn't let go, and it looked really tense, and it was like he was just losing it. And then he stepped back and he said to her really sarcastically, "Well, thank you for admiring me so much." It's 2020, Joe. This is not how you talk to women, ever. And just, I don't understand how a single woman, or anyone really, but in this election, when you're facing a man that, one of the biggest attacks on him is he's sexist, right? He's made these comments about women on live mics. Why are you just giving people opposition on you? And it's so true that he's doing politics like it's a decade ago or 2 decades ago. you need to have evolved by now, Joe. It's time to catch up and join us in this century, and this is not how you don't respond to voters in that way, and you definitely don't be this disrespectful to women when you have a terrible reputation with women. This is not, I don't know how any woman thinking of herself in any way, shape, or form as feminist could, in good conscience, vote for Joe Biden.
Well, I also, by the way, just so the audience knows, I want to make sure you understand this. When I'm looking at my phone, I am paying attention to what they're saying, because some people get upset. But I want you to know I'm looking because I want to bring up a poll, or I want to get to a story that I wanted to bring up. So it's for the interview when I'm looking at my phone, or I'm making sure the audio works, or I have my next interview texting me and I have to tell them I'm running late. So I don't have a producer out here or an earpiece to give me this information, so I have to look at my phone. So I hope you don't think I'm being disrespectful. It's all to enhance the interview. So, and to see if Jen's texting me, yelling at me. So, God bless Jen. By the way, Jen's sick. And she's still working, and I have a pinched nerve in my neck, so leave some money in the super chat. We need some love for our illnesses. I wanted to bring up, because this is a continuation, there's another Iowa poll out, this one from Iowa American Research Group. Bernie at 23%, Biden at 17%, Klobuchar 16%, which is the highest I've seen Amy Klobuchar, Warren at 15%, Mayor CIA at Pete at 9%. So Bernie is up 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's 6 points, 17 to 23. That's, again, I have not even looked into the methodology. I don't know. But this is now the third or fourth Iowa poll in the last week with Bernie either in the lead or essentially tied. So that says something. I also think there's something, getting back to the Biden point. There was a Pennsylvania poll that came out yesterday. And to me, this is one of the most illuminating polls I've seen. And as such, NBC, MSNBC will not cover it. Biden was up in this poll in Pennsylvania, where he's from, Scranton Joe, 7 points. That might sound like, oh, okay, it's a healthy lead. They only polled among 18 to 24-year-olds, 3%. They only polled, let me get out the tweet so I could give you the actual list. It was something like between 18 and 45. They only polled like 20% of the poll was under 45. So this is, and by the way, this is how it's gone the entire election and 2016. These very, very oversampled older voters, polls that oversample older voters, it starts in the morning on MSNBC with Morning Joe. They start talking about these polls. They don't discuss the methodology. They don't discuss how many people from each age bracket was polled. For a while, the Nate Silvers of the world were calling people like me and Jen, who were reporting on this, like conspiracy theorists. And they were saying, well, we do it based on how many young people vote. And young people don't vote as... I'm like, did you look at 2016? 2018? So, and now, just a couple days ago, Nate Silver comes out with a tweet basically admitting what I've been saying for a year, what Jen has been saying for a year. So I bring this up. If Biden's only up 7 points in Pennsylvania, and they basically... the poll was done in a senior's home, how is he most electable? Because you would have to think on the actual election day, there's going to be a good amount of young people, especially if Bernie's winning Iowa, possibly New Hampshire, who knows about California. If Biden, honestly, it's probably tied if it were polled correctly. If Biden's not even winning his home state in a primary, we're not even talking about the general versus Trump. How is he the most, forget electable, how is this not going to be a worse defeat than Hillary Clinton experienced?
Yeah. I mean, it's very true. They have this hollow facade that they portray as like electability, and they know. I mean, I don't know that they know this. I would hope that they know damn well that come the general, none of that's going to matter. Trump is going to eviscerate them. All their inflated fake polls are not going to do anything to help them. And that's where you really start to wonder, like, maybe they don't mind Trump. Maybe at the end of the day, they don't really, their special interests, their business interests are going to be protected under him, whereas Bernie's going to go after him. You know, we were with someone last night who heard Zuckerberg say that at least it wasn't Bernie in 2016. The night that Trump won, he said...
Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah. He said, like, look, I know that it's difficult. We wanted Hillary, but thank God it wasn't Bernie. That's what these billionaires are really worried about, is having their special interests, their businesses broken up and redistributed. So, yeah, really, I'd love to see Peter Dow and Nate Silver go against each other in like an American Gladiator type battle. I think it would be, yeah, woke Peter Dow, Comrade Dow is pretty awesome.
Chairman Dow.
Yeah, Chairman Dow.
Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on that? Because to me, at a certain point, listen, I make fun of corporate media till I'm blue in the face. I criticize them till I'm blue in the face. But I will tell you, I know a lot of these people. I DM with some of them. They make a lot of money, and as such, they do what they got to do. But some of them are good people. Wow, I sound like Trump, but some are good people. But these are not dummies. They know what's going on. I have spoken off the record. I won't share their names. I have spoken with people that work for CNN. I have spoken with people at the Washington Post that say, like, I'm not a doctor. I've made clear I'm not diagnosing with Joe Biden with anything, but have said, yeah, we all talk about it. Like, at the hotels, at the bars, like, obviously, something's not right up there. It doesn't mean, he's 77 years old. It comes with age. So, I don't want none of us are saying, like, we wish him poor health. But I've been saying for 6 months to a year, like, anyone with eyes, I think it's irresponsible, if you are a journalist, not to point out, this isn't stuttering because he was vice president in 2016, not having these issues. He was not having these issues as a senator in 2008. So you could have a lifetime struggle with stuttering. I stuttered when I was a kid. I took speech, occupational therapy, and I came out of it. Maybe at 77, after 2 brain aneurysms, which Joe Biden has had, maybe who knows? So I don't know what is going on. But even reporters have said, like, this is not a good thing to go up against Trump. And Trump has his own mental declining features, but at least he could sell himself. At least he's not, it's like a record that's got scratches on it while he's speaking, Biden. So I come to the point, maybe it's not actually this be-all, end-all, defeat Trump no matter what. Maybe it's defeat Trump no matter what except Bernie.
I think it entirely is. I don't know how many times I've expressed this, but the Democrats didn't mind Trump at all. Trump was a Christmas gift. Trump is excellent for fundraising. He's excellent for Speaker Pelosi's approval ratings. Trump dropped the bar.
He made her Speaker Pelosi.
Yeah, she's an icon now to the certain liberal circles because of her. I think a prominent white woman blue check mark the other day said she was, quote, gangsta checking him on Twitter. Yeah. Yes, queen, Sideways clap. Do the sideways clap. But, what do the Democrats have to do anymore with Trump in office? Exist. Sit there. Ask for money. Do nothing. But Trump. Yeah, they don't want someone actually offering a real alternative to people. You might actually have to do something for once. You might have to earn that money that you're asking for. They don't mind Trump in office. He doesn't actually threaten their interests. If they actually gave a crap about losing, they would have changed strategy at some point in the last decade when they lost over 1,000 seats. They don't care.
Jeremy, can I ask you, because to me what seems different here, you talk about 2016 versus 2020 because you volunteered in 2016. 2016, literally Bernie did not run to win. I think from what I understand, he first thought he could win when he upset in Michigan. So Bernie was running a protest campaign, not to win for the most part. As such, he had a skeleton staff in the beginning. He was very, very outfunded for the most part, very, very understaffed compared to the Clinton machine. The Clinton machine, as you later found out, was getting an assist from the Obama administration, from the DNC. So it was really David versus Goliath. This time around, I don't want to say well-oiled, because obviously we want renewable, but this is a real professional campaign. The mentality is, no, we're not trying to protest. We're trying to destroy and win. And there's a different mentality I'm seeing among volunteers. Even when I was at the Des Moines office yesterday, people were just laser focused. There was not even joyous conversation going on. It's just efficiency. Can you kind of talk about, you've been here for a week or two, what is the conversations like among volunteers? What are the conversations like? Is there victory in the air, or people aren't even letting themselves get there? Because we could talk about California, we could talk about Texas, but you don't want to get ahead of yourself either.
No, yeah. No, I mean, especially with how vital Iowa is, you know, the kind of the perception of an inevitability for winners of the Ohio primaries, or not Ohio, Iowa. I can't talk anymore. I'm really talked out. I've been talking to people for a week. But yeah, it's a mix. It's people, I think, we're not used to feeling like we're winners. We're not used to feeling like we actually, and we've been underdogs, and we've been underdogs for years. And this, you know, there's this sense of like almost disbelief at how good it looks like we might be doing. And the thing that was worrying me was that, you know, when we got good news, people would slack off and you would see a decline in the volunteer activity and the phone banking and the canvassing. And if anything, I'm seeing the opposite. Every single time something good comes out in the news cycle, my Facebook timeline is flooded with all of my Bernie people saying, don't take it for granted. Act like he's 15 points behind. Keep going. Amp it up. This is our shot. You know, we've got to throw everything. We need to leave it all on the field, which is kind of why I'm here. I was, for a while, I was kind of looking at maybe I should, you know, apply for a job with the Bernie campaign or whatever, and it wasn't happening. Finally, I was like, that's it. I'm just going to leave and drive up there and just canvass because I don't want to, we can't lose by this much. You know, it'll be, yeah, I don't want to have to think about that. But yeah, the vibe is very, like you said, laser focused. I think everyone understands this is war. This might be our last shot. And, yeah, it's really been, it's very good to see that how efficiently and, yeah, like I feel like we trimmed all the fat, you know, and so it's a few years after 2016 and we had some time to kind of assess and understand what could have been done better, et cetera. And, yeah, everybody was just like ready to roll this time around. So our ground game has been incredible.
Yeah, it's remarkable difference.
Share what your involvement was in 2016.
Yeah, so, I mean, last time I was on the show with Ty, we were talking about that, like, how is it different? Last time, there was more naivety, more exuberance. You know, it was way more hope-based and needed in that moment to build up this contingent of people. But this time it really, really needs to be, we're buckling down, we are working hard, we have our eyes on the prize. I mean, in 2016, the first Bernie staffer to show up in LA was like our South California like regional director, and she came, like the first meeting she had was like in my living room with Team Bernie LA, the grassroots, and she basically said like, okay, you guys are way more set up than we are. What do you need? What can we do to protect, you know, to promote you at this point? Now we've got multiple offices open in California. I mean, multiple in LA even. They're really, really dialing in and getting a lot of work done, verifiable voter data. So it's really good to see, you know, that effort. But at the same time, like there's this huge grassroots apparatus that exists now. I mean, these groups that were formed in 2016 have only cemented and grown stronger and just learn how to really focus in and be effective. So that's what I'm seeing is, yeah, we're tempered now. We're not messing around this time, you know. My biggest fear is the voter suppression that we know is going to happen. I'm trying to emotionally ready myself for that because I know there's nothing we can do to completely stop it. We have to overwhelm it. Yeah. And I think that's everyone really knows. We have to overwhelm people being knocked off the voter rolls, long lines, all the shit that happened before, this new app that Robbie Mook is playing with. It's just awful. But again, you know, then you hear the counterpoint that, yes, we are combating that with verifiable paper data. So, yeah, we're not here to play. We're here to win. And we're not here to win to win. We're here to win to change this country and change the world for the better and protect this planet and people. So, yeah, no joke this time.
And remember, press the like button. Keep it coming. I don't know how many people are watching. I don't know how many people have pressed the like button. We need every single person to press that like button. It's a super chat if you're feeling super. And we are on a bit of a upswing as in terms of membership. We're at 800. 800. And no, what the fuck am I? You say you don't know where you are? I don't know where I am. We are at 887. No, 878. Got it. 878 status coup members. We got to get to 900 by the night of the caucus, so we got a few days. Statuscoup.com/join. Become a member for as low as $5 a month. I don't see CNN doing this. I certainly don't see any other outlets, even in the independent space, frankly. They'll come in, you know, the day of, but like we want to get in the trenches. We need money to do that. I want to talk about the second ballot because for people in the weeds kind of know about it, but maybe not the whole audience knows about it. So basically, Iowa is, to me, a bit of a fakakta system, but you got the first vote at the caucus site, and then if a candidate gets 15% of the vote on the first vote, they're whatever they call it, eligible. If a candidate, like let's say a Yang or a Klobuchar or somebody polling lower, doesn't get 15% at that caucus site, then they don't get any delegates, and their voters are essentially like released to be able to vote for other people. So obviously, to me, it should just be one vote, whatever. But putting that aside, there's talks like publicly, Amy Klobuchar is saying, no, I'm not making any deals with Joe Biden, because there's been reports that Joe Biden campaign reached out to Klobuchar's campaign to see if they could make a deal. Like, hey, if you don't get enough, if you don't get that 15% at a caucus site, tell your voters to go to me, and I'll tell my voters to do the same if I don't. Amy Klobuchar publicly is saying, I'm not making any deals, but you know how these things work. Caucus site to caucus site, there could be Biden people there instructing voters, go to her, and vice versa. But it plays both sides, so you got the most similar profile to a Bernie Sanders supporter would be Andrew Yang, maybe, Tulsi Gabbard. There are Warren supporters. Polls show Bernie's second choice. So it seems to me like the second ballot could play an even bigger part than in past caucuses, just because there's so many candidates. So there's so many potential voters possible to switch over to either a Bernie or a Biden. Is that in your calculation, like when you talk to people, when you knock on doors?
Yeah, like I was saying, in my experience, a lot of Iowa voters don't understand that. I mean, I feel like, I just learned that yesterday too, where practically it's been what's the phrase? It's like trying to drink out of a fire hydrant or something, in the last few years. It's just been like trying to learn all of this stuff. And the whole process is so overcomplicated. It's even more complicated than that, because like not all the delegates are assigned at the state level. There's district level delegates, and somebody could hit the threshold in a district but not state, and then maybe they get a delegate or two, and it's a little bit, it's very complicated.
And we haven't even gotten into super delegates.
Oh God, whole other story.
Yeah.
But yeah, in my experience, the Iowa voters that I've talked to have not really been aware of that, unless they're like super political. But so I've been using that to kind of say, then I'm not coming at them trying to like change their mind, because in my experience, it's a waste of time. When someone shows up on your door and wants to talk to you about politics, you're kind of in defense mode. But if it's like, hey, that's great, I'm glad you're going to caucus. By the way, just so you know, you might want to know this in case, because you might be faced with a split second decision, and you have a second choice. Have you been thinking about that? And the ones that I've spoken to have been like, oh no, I didn't know that. And so then that kind of gives me an opportunity to still make a plug for Bernie, but they're not they're not hostile, and I'm not being aggressive, so I can just kind of share, hey, if this issue impresses you about whoever, Pete, Warren, somebody. Hey, did you know Bernie's really strong on this? And another thing I've been letting these voters know too is how well he's doing in battleground states, what the polling looks like with him versus Trump, because of course the corporate media is not making people aware of that. Because the one issue I have heard most voters voice is just defeating Trump. So it's really helpful to say, hey, did you know he's doing well against Trump in Florida, in Texas? Some of these states that, Indiana, which is where I grew up, went blue twice in history, I think, and one time was for Barack Obama's first run. I'm fairly confident Bernie will turn Indiana blue if we can get him nominated, and that's so much. This is the kind of thing that like some of these voters are thinking of. How is he going to perform in the general? Is he capable of beating Trump? The process is. It is really. I mean, in a way, it's a little bit like ranked choice voting, and I don't hate that. And I wish we were able to implement that. I think Maine has ranked choice now. That's really nice.
And they did away with superdelegates. They did away with superdelegates as well.
Yeah.
They were the one state, I think, that was able to accomplish that, whereas everyone else has been mollified by this idea of, they don't vote in the first round, but that's a whole level of, nonsense that they're trying to pull off. My biggest hope for Iowa is, a lot of these people who would otherwise support Bernie have been fed the mainstream media narrative that he can't win, he's not electable. I hope that he clears like 22, 23, 25%, something like that, so that it becomes immediately apparent to anybody paying attention, oh, wow, he can do this. So if it does come to the second round, he gets a lot more support from people who, people who'd be on the fence and they don't want to vote for a potentially losing candidate or movement. But now if they see a potential, they'll put that support there. So yeah, I'm planning on, with my canvassing efforts as well, really promoting the idea of, look, if you like Bernie but don't think he can win, you have a chance. You can watch him perform and have a chance to then throw your support behind.
So let's get to the elephant in the room. You talked about it briefly, but there's a whole lot of people watching that just do not trust this process. Whether it's Iowa, whether it's state by state, they're going to screw us again. Maybe they won't put it in writing this time if you're the DNC, but they're trying something. I mean, we just saw Tom Perez is nominating to the Democratic National Convention's committees like a who's who of Bernie knifers who just hate Bernie Sanders. And, meanwhile, they clearly, I mean, CNN basically has, like, a bunch of their contributors are all former DNC people. And some of them were just with the DNC, like, as of 5 minutes ago, and, like, quit. And now are CNN contributors calling Bernie Sanders a Bernie bro and sexist. So it's basically just like that revolving door. So there's different ways to rig something, and part of it is the day-to-day free media super PAC against Bernie Sanders. So obviously you can't cover all of Iowa and you don't know, but like, is the do you get a sense that the campaign is better equipped this time if there are shenanigans? Because I know from 2016 there was this mentality, and frankly it came from Bernie at the top. Nah, they'll just paint us as sore losers. So like after New York and the purging there, like we just got to move on to Pennsylvania, because if we sue or if we do anything, they'll just paint us as sore losers. I know you guys are volunteers, but I'm just kind of getting a sense, like, are volunteers?
Yeah.
Is there an idea like, no, if it happens again, we're going to war?
So I think, we're constantly having to tread the line and not look aggressive or not look, like we're too far off in the weeds politically. But really, I do think the campaign is more prepared now for those tricks. I'm from California. I worked really, really hard along with many other people to get him elected there. And we all had to suffer the heartbreak of the AP declaring the thing done the day before we even got to vote. And just like staffing at Bernie's coffee shop that day, we weren't a voting center, but many people came in wanting to vote because they couldn't at their own polling locations. They were off the rolls. They were given a provisional ballot in tears that they couldn't vote for Bernie. My vote didn't count for Bernie in 2016. I went to the registrar's office with my mail-in ballot, handed it in, and my vote was never counted. So yeah, there's definitely more focus on that, definitely in the grassroots. I mean, we're talking about funding to do polling, like precinct captains or just observation, exit polls, like whatever we can do to prove that there's been adjustments or cheating on the DNC's part, because it's going to happen.
Yeah. No, I was told at the field office if I ran into anybody who was really enthusiastic about Bernie to see if they wanted to volunteer as a precinct captain, because they're really looking for people that are like, invested, motivated, very definitely on Bernie's side, to be kind of supervising the process. But yeah, I do get the impression that the campaign is a little bit better prepared. I like the fact that we're seeing campaign surrogates or staff like Nina Turner or Brianna Joy Gray firing back when the media attacks us on Twitter and helping to deflate and destroy these arguments. This whole Bernie bro thing, that it's so obvious that they have like literally nothing on him. They keep chanting to each other, "He's not been vetted yet," like it's this.
Sorry to cut you off, but yesterday was just, I mean, if this is what they got, they're going to fail. But they tried to make it seem like Bernie Sanders in the 1970s, like, complimented George McGovern, or was it George Wallace, I think it was, because Bernie Sanders basically said, like, he's a fascist. He compared him to Hitler. But he said, but he's also sensitive to what people want to hear. And, kind of like Trump, like, and they made it, and the headline was like, Bernie Sanders calls George Wallace sensitive. And this is trending, but he literally in that interview or speech or whatever it was said, compared him to Hitler. But this is what they have. So it's like, I'm not saying this is a Bernie Sanders supporter. I'm just saying it as a journalist. Like, that's just intentionally taking something totally out of context, picking a quote and distorting it. So that's that's what's going to happen.
For the former Goldwater girl, right? Like they don't have anything to say about Hillary, basically shilling for the end of the civil rights movement when Bernie was being arrested for it. Like it's insane. They have nothing. Their whole argument is a big nothing burger, and I really do think, maybe not with older people who are already brainwashed, entrenched into the CNN, Fox, whatever, media nonsense, but I really do think that every time they try to attack him on these false platitudes, it just hurts them. It makes them look less credible. You saw the debate with CNN where, Rolling Stone magazine came out afterwards and called them villainous and nefarious. And that's exactly what they were. So they're just outing themselves as state media, basically. And you're right. When you can move from the DNC to CNN and back and forth, like what was her name? Donna Brazil. It's just so obvious that this whole thing it's like the rich and the corporations and the media all protecting one another and protecting their interests. And when it becomes that obvious, the people see it because of people like you coming out here and covering the actual movement and the actual people. So
I want to end, if you'll give me permission to look at my phone, with a couple questions for the guests or comments, whatever. A lot of excited people right now. So we have definitely send in questions for them if you have any questions about what they're hearing, that kind of thing. It's okay to vote Bernie, somebody said. George Wallace became more progressive in his late years after being shot. That's true. That is true. Sometimes it takes a bullet. And then the movement needs to grow like France. So saying we need to get more into a yellow vest. Pence interview in Iowa by a doctor caught him lying on Trump's new Medicaid. I was going to bring that up also because you kind of, I don't know if you were a child, but you did grow up in Indiana under Mike Pence's Indiana. So oh God, talk about that a little bit.
Well, first of all, I just want to apologize on behalf of the state of Indiana. We wanted to get rid of him. We didn't know he would go there. But there were more signs, fire Mike Pence signs up and down Indiana than there were signs for anyone else. Even in Indiana, which is, thought of as a red state. He's terrible. What he did to Scott County is unforgivable. He closed, Planned Parenthood locations that didn't even perform abortions. Then there was the whole episode with the HIV outbreak, and you have this community, even sheriffs there who are conservative, who don't really agree with a needle exchange program, begging Pence to do a needle exchange program. His response: "I'll pray about it." Because that's your job when you're the governor and you have a job to do, and people there were catching this like flies, and he's just sitting there doing nothing. And Pence was not popular in Indiana. Indiana is like one of those states that people, the Democratic establishment generally speaking, would kind of ignore or think is just going to go right wing. And it's exactly the kind of state that would respond to a candidate like Bernie Sanders. I canvassed there heavily after I came back after the New York primary, and it was easy. I would walk into gas stations in rural parts of Indiana with my Bernie shirt on, and everyone in there would be like, hell yeah, he's a good dude. I'd vote for him. Can he win? There was this hunger for a candidate like somebody like Bernie to come along who would be real with people, who would actually listen to their problems, who would, not just, I'm going to fix your life, but, actually say, I can't fix this, but I think we can build a movement together. And if we all cooperate on this, then there's hope and there's real potential to do something here. Indiana is ripe to be Bernie country. And so many states like that are very much like that. But people like Mike Pence, well, I can't talk about what I'd like to say about.
It's not ripe to be Bernie. Bernie won Indiana. He won Indiana.
Versus Trump. He did win Indiana in the primary, yes. When we worked so hard for that win, and he wasn't polling to win Indiana even right before the primary. And I remember that whole day I was a poll judge, and we were swamped with people. Everyone, because I hadn't done that before, but the other kind of the old election, workers, they were like, we've never seen anything like this before. And young people were coming in, and I was happy I was there because there were people coming in that they were going to turn away. They said they didn't have the right kind of ID, and I was like, no, that's good. They can come in. There were so many people, and at the end of the day, when we had I helped take the stuff to the courthouse to get it certified, and Bernie won versus Hillary 2-1 in the precinct that I was watching. And then I drove as fast as I could to the watch party, and I was like, how's he doing? And he pulled off that win. And then to have to stand there in FDR Park across from the Wells Fargo Center, you were there, and as they're broadcasting, someone's got the feed, and to have to listen to the super delegates give Indiana away just like that after all the work that we put in, betraying the people that actually lived in my state.
Yeah, we had it up on the Jumbotron. We had a big Jumbotron screen in FDR Park, and just this massive collective heartbreak because we heard what happened. You know what happened in Philly. They did a count in the morning at the delegate breakfast where all the delegates from every state met with their state, had breakfast, and they did a count. Bernie had more delegates in Philly than Hillary did. And that spoke to the passion and commitment to Bernie's campaign and the flocking away from Hillary's campaign with scandal after scandal, with her just denigrating anybody who didn't immediately agree with her, your basement dwellers, your basket of deplorables. I mean, she wasn't running to win people over. She was running because she was arrogant and thought she deserved it. So by the convention, there were more people there that actually stuck with Bernie and showed up. So then they did the big grand reveal of the delegate count, and they put the super delegates in that count without actually telling us that they were doing so. So you get these big, massive numbers where you get 10,000 votes for a superdelegate, and they weren't actually letting us know that was going on. So yeah, it's just subterfuge the whole way.
Somebody asked how John Delaney dropping out is going to affect things. If you know, John Delaney dropped out today. I don't know what's the bigger breaking news, that he dropped out or he was still running. I didn't even know he was still running. Deval Patrick is technically still running, the former governor of Massachusetts. Michael Bennet, Colorado senator, is still running. He's got the much sought after endorsement of James Carville. Who else is there? I mean, it's just crazy. But that actually brings me to another point. I know I'm going to get hit for this, but I just got to keep it real because math is math. Tulsi Gabbard is, right now, she's not really competing in Iowa. She's staked out New Hampshire. I've seen her in New Hampshire about 8 or 9%. That was the highest. Usually it's about 5 or 6% in New Hampshire. Obviously, she just showed up. A lot of people on social media were a little "Ooh, what does this mean?" Because she showed up actually at a Bernie field office here in Iowa. I don't know if it was in Iowa or New Hampshire. I'm not sure, but it was at a Bernie field office just to say hello. She looked like she was in workout clothes because she works out obviously daily. So there's camaraderie there. Obviously, after Elizabeth Warren shanked Bernie in the front, Tulsi Gabbard came out saying, "Well, I told him I was running for president. He was perfectly nice and professional and generous. Didn't try to talk me out of it, nothing like that." So obviously there's been little tea leaves here that she is going to ally with Bernie Sanders at some point. I don't mean that in a way to disenfranchise her supporters. I like her in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers. I think she was treated very unfairly. I think if she would have gotten fair media coverage, she would have polled a lot better. What happened to her now is basically what happened to Bernie in 2016. It was either a blackout for the most part, or, he's for Tulsi's version, a Russian agent. But not saying she should drop out, but do you think after Iowa, I mean, let's say Bernie wins pretty comfortably, he's going to have even bigger polling bump, you would think. There's going to be at least 1 or 2 polls after Iowa between New Hampshire. If he wins Iowa, you're going to see a bigger bump for him there. Some polls have him up 12 to 13 points in New Hampshire. Do you think Tulsi Gabbard, would you want to see her before New Hampshire endorse him? What are your thoughts?
So, yeah, I mean, you and I were with Tulsi in Standing Rock. We saw her. She was the only person running for president right now that went there, donated her time, her platform to actually show what was going on. So I have respect for her in that regard. I've run into her several times, from 2016 to now. I've heard whispers that, there was this agreement made between Bernie and Tulsi and Cory Booker that in the very beginning, they would throw their support and delegates behind him if they made it that far down the road. Yeah, I can't confirm that, but I've heard many people that are very connected to the campaign say this, that they actually support Bernie. If it gets to the point where they're polling lower, then they'll throw delegates or support behind him. I have a real strong feeling that Tulsi's doing that. it would be a massive service to the movement if she was able to, like we heard, convince her supporters to caucus for Bernie if she doesn't make the cut. And then, yeah, if she were to drop out between now and New Hampshire and endorse him, I think that there's a big swath of the progressive movement, mostly veterans from what I'm seeing, who connect with her on that issue, that are just all too happy now to come back into the Bernie fold and once again throw their weight behind him. So yeah, I think he's going to get a big bump. I don't think she's like a political assassin. It's amazing. She's just been able to like just destroy people from the inside. And you know, why have some issues with some of her views and associations. Yeah, I really do think that she's done a lot to hamstring some of these awful candidates that are in the race.
Well, the reason I'm saying it is because, honestly, I can't get in Tulsi Gabbard's mind. I interviewed her. And I think that if you run a protest campaign, it's to make a point, right? Well, what's the better way for you to make a point? To do something to help the movement, and frankly, let's be real, set yourself up to be in the Sanders administration, which I think would be a much higher likelihood. I don't know whether it be vice president or defense secretary or whatever, but I mean, the bottom line is, I'm sorry to tell her supporters, and I don't mean this condescendingly, it's just some of her supporters truly don't trust the polls and these kinds of things, but she's not going to win. We could discuss why that is. Again, I think the media coverage was very, very unfair. She barely got times in the debates. And I'm happy she ran because it actually gets this issue of these wars and regime change and the military-industrial complex front and center. Because a lot of the issues you're going around knocking on doors they're all interconnected. Particularly the amount of money we're wasting killing brown people around the world. But my point is, if you're Tulsi Gabbard, what would you have more? How do you have more effect? Staying until New Hampshire, coming in maybe at 10%? And not having any more money, I mean, I don't know what the path would be after New Hampshire. You're not going to win New Hampshire, or endorsing the candidate closest to your foreign policy views, and then possibly, I think she'd be definitely considered as vice president, or something else. It just, to me, I don't want to play, I'm not doing this as a horse race. I'm just saying, listen, if Bernie Sanders wins Iowa, if Tulsi Gabbard then endorses him before New Hampshire, he could possibly, he's not going to win by 20 points like 2016, but she's at 5 or 6%. That, even if 3% of her supporters go to Bernie, it will look like he walloped everybody else in New Hampshire. You have that kind of momentum with her support behind him before New Hampshire. Nevada next, where he's doing very well. Let me tell you something. If Bernie Sanders wins the first 3 states, they could throw Jesus Christ at Bernie Sanders. Michael Bloomberg's not going to stop Bernie Sanders if he wins the first 3 states. And if Bernie wins the first 3 states, I got news for you. Biden, I think he would still win South Carolina, but unless he beats Bernie by 40 points in South Carolina, anything less, even if he wins South Carolina by 20, Bernie Sanders doing better than he did last time, it's going to be viewed as a loss for Joe Biden. So I guess I'm making the point, mathematically, I just think progressives coalescing around Bernie, hey, maybe she'll outperform in Iowa, and my point is mute. Maybe my point will be mute. If she does well in Iowa, of course I think she should stay in. But her campaign hasn't really put many resources into Iowa. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think, understanding as we do in sort of the progressive movement, this is not just about this race. This is an entire thing. The role that Tulsi supporters can play in this primary, seen from the viewpoint of this movement as a whole, it could be incredibly powerful. Like, because of the importance of the first few states, you have the ability to potentially give Bernie Sanders such a compelling mandate, rolling into these first primaries that he's the undeniable front runner and the media can't ignore it anymore. And yeah, sometimes that does come down to just a few percentage points. But yeah, I mean, I feel like the Tulsi base and the Bernie base we've been more or less running on parallel paths, and I think we always knew we were going to converge again eventually and wind up back on the same team. So it's like those X's that
it's like those X's where it didn't work out. You guys go kiss some other people for a few years, maybe
I don't have any of those.
Go on vacation together with other people, but you just something in your gut knew, like, I'm going to get back with that other person.
Yeah. I think Tulsi's new campaign slogan should be "I'm suing Hillary," because she'd probably win the Republican primary if she was able to say that. I got a lot of love for that move on her part, and I love that Hillary's trying to dodge it, because what could she say? She publicly defamed a U.S. congresswoman and a veteran. Like, no matter what you think of Tulsi, that was the facts. That's what she did.
I am so sorry to be rude, but we have breaking news. Breaking news. As we were talking about Michael Bloomberg.
Oh.
The DNC has changed its rules for participation in the Democratic primary debates, eliminating the individual donor requirement.
Of course they do.
This could allow Michael Bloomberg to participate in debates after the February 11th New Hampshire primary.
Let him.
So let's crush him.
Let him. Get him on the stage.
Yeah. Oh, I can't
Well,
wait till he gets
no, this gets back to, and Jen, I don't know if we could do this without screwing things up, but if we could change the headline of this live stream to like breaking DNC changes rules to allow Michael Bloomberg in the debate, I think that would help. Let me get your thoughts before I give my thought.
Oh, well, let me take a second and remove all the curse words from.
I just want to make sure people understand it. So the two requirements thus far were getting a certain amount of individual donors and getting a certain amount in the polls. So people like Cory Booker were struggling because they had money in some cases, but they weren't polling high enough. So now this gets rid of, it doesn't matter if you have two donors, you're eligible, you just have to poll well, which Bloomberg is rising in the polls.
I mean, if nothing else, it's an indictment of the DNC, just watching them play fast and loose with their own rules in order to keep certain candidates off the stage or allow them back on. I mean, I'm no fan of Andrew Yang. I am not a fan of his policies, but like, he was a different sort of politician. He brought things to the table that don't normally get discussed, and you could just see the DNC, perfectly happy to allow him to be excluded from the debate stage by some of those requirements, but now we're going to change them to allow a billionaire onto the stage. And Tulsi as well, yes. Yeah, anybody who was I don't understand what they're going for with Bloomberg. I think that's also very indicative of this old, archaic, dusty mindset in terms of politics in general. They're really still not getting the fact that this isn't how we do things anymore. And your money doesn't do what it used to do. It doesn't buy you what it used to buy you, especially not when we can grassroots fundraise and beat you at your own game. So, I mean, honestly, put Bloomberg on the stage. I can't wait for the American people to hear the incredibly dated, oblivious, privileged ideas that he still clearly holds compared to someone like Bernie Sanders. I mean, I don't see any way that goes wrong for us. I don't know what you're...
I would like to amend my last answer about Tulsi and say we need you to murder one more candidate, please. Let's keep her in, past New Hampshire, take out Bloomberg, kneecap that dude. Like, because, Bernie can go so far. When he went after Pete and said, I don't know, Pete, you're really energetic. Catch up with the billionaire donors. I mean, that was great. But he can only skirt the line with that, whereas Tulsi can go all in. So, no, I think that, Bloomberg being in, he's this, candidate that all the people have seen from is this polished, multi-million-dollar ad buy that he's done. Like, I'm in California, every 3 minutes the same Bloomberg ad comes on. And it's not doing great for his polling. Like, he's coming up in the polls a little bit, but he's not taking any from Bernie. So I'm not worried about Bloomberg unseating Bernie. I think that it would be great for those middling centrist candidates to all steal from each other a little more, and then have somebody so heinous like stop and frisk. Come on. He's a billionaire who implemented stop and frisk in New York, and that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly with the voters. So, yeah.
Well, while we're on the topic of candidates who really should think about folding their campaigns in order to serve the greater good, Tom Steyer, what are you doing, man? Come on, dude. The memes are cute and all. I know you have a bromance with Bernie going on. It's I like plaid. We're fans of plaid, okay? But your whole thing is you're the climate candidate, and yet Bernie's the one with the most aggressive Green New Deal. Bernie's the one being endorsed by the Sunrise Movement and other environmental groups. You don't have a viable path to the presidency. If you really care about these issues that you claim to care about so much, you got to see this is not the era for these rich guy Batman Messiah complex. This is just Dude, you could do some good, really. If you want to be seen as a good billionaire, we may make some allowances for you when the revolution comes if you're willing to throw support behind the clear front runner and the person that we need in office right now. Just come on.
That money could buy a lot of guillotines.
So I have a very, very, what do the kids call this? Hot take?
Hot take.
I have a hot take on this. And remember to smash the like button. I need every single person right now. Press that like button. This is breaking news. We're in Iowa. By the way, after this, I don't know how far it is, but I'm going to a canvassing. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib is here. So is Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. So is Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal. Congressman Ro Khanna coming in this weekend. So we're going to try to hit as many things as we can. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib meeting with volunteers, I think in a half hour, to go out and canvass. Tonight I'll be going to an event Jane Sanders is doing with Michael Moore. I think like an hour away from here. Obviously, Bernie is not here yet because he's on jury duty, which I haven't been paying attention to. But impeachment, I think they don't have enough votes for witnesses. We'll talk about that another time. Here's my hot take. The DNC and the Democratic Party has just decided they view it as to not make the same mistake that the Never Trumpers made. Because the Never Trumpers did not organize early enough and coalesce, they did not coalesce around one person early enough, and they did not coalesce around like an actual mission, like obviously to stop Trump, but like how to do it. I think this is the DNC and Barack Obama behind the scenes realizing Joe Biden is a dead duck.
Yeah.
I think Biden's internal polling, remember, public polling is different than a campaign's internal polling. So Warren, in my view, the reason that she took the extreme measure to basically breach a private conversation with your political ally and friend, even if Bernie said it, which it's hearsay, who knows what he said, I think he probably said, are you prepared for the sexist onslaught that's going to come? And she interpreted it as him saying a woman can't win. This happens all the time where you say one thing, somebody hears another thing, and it's a game of telephone. But from what I hear, her internal polling and her campaign was worse than the public polling. She had to do something, and that's what she did. So if the DNC is before the Iowa caucus basically just opening the door for Michael Bloomberg, to me, they're realizing we got to jump ship here. Biden is touching people. His campaign is not even allowing him to talk to the press.
His eyes bleeding.
If you were here earlier, his campaign, instead of having him actually answer reporters on their questions about Social Security, they are handing talking points out. They're handing out like a little book report to reporters. To me, this is them jumping ship, because if they're going to allow him to enter debates after New Hampshire, the reason they would be doing that is they are envisioning a possible scenario where Bernie wins Iowa and New Hampshire, and we need to do something, because obviously they're seeing Biden is like a horse in the Kentucky Derby that starts out decent but is just hobbling along. To me, this is wrapping around Bloomberg. We could discuss whether Bloomberg would be a good thing or a bad thing, but the one bad thing about Bloomberg, yes, I agree with you that we're in a different time, but we're not even going to have to wait for the Republicans with the ads about Bernie being a communist, the ads about, I mean, Bloomberg will spend $500 million, $1 billion. This is what narcissists do. He thinks he is a messiah trying to stop Bernie Sanders. I don't think it will work, but I think if the DNC, which by doing this, they're rallying around Bloomberg, which is very unfair, by the way, to even Cory Booker, who couldn't get on debates because he didn't meet the two requirements, Tulsi, Andrew Yang, many others that were left out because they didn't meet these two requirements. This is what rigging is. Do you see it how I see it, that this is them coming around Bloomberg?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is, and it's odd that, like, it's just so myopic that to think that this billionaire who was a Republican is going to actually dethrone or unseat Bernie at this populist movement. It's really wild. I think he doesn't really represent much other than moneyed interests. He's talking about reparations, but he doesn't really mean it. I think that the move here for us, Bernie supporters and anyone who wants to stop him, is like, take a job with this campaign, take that money and tank it. Like, I don't know.
See how quickly you can get fired.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I do get the impression that that's probably what they're going for. My question would be, is it not already a little bit too late? Can you actually transfer enough of Biden's base at this point to Bloomberg in the time you would need to in order to stop Bernie's momentum? And I feel like what I'm hearing, you know, there are even people on Twitter saying, low key, there's actually a lot of Democrats, insider Democrats, who are kind of resigned at this point. I think they realize that they may have, you know, maybe they tried not to repeat the mistakes of the Never Trumpers, but I don't think they really kicked it into gear soon enough. I think there were so many points where we've defied, you know, expectations in terms of, I think they thought Bernie's campaign was never going to get off the ground for a second time. I think they thought he was a fluke. I think they thought he was a novelty. And when he was running against Hillary, sure, he got a lot of support, but why would he get that, you know, that kind of support in a field of all these diverse, interesting, you know, in their minds, candidates who they probably assumed would take some of that support off? The heart attack thing, you know. They thought he was there. There's all kinds of tweets you can find now that are aging like milk from, you know, Tom Watson and all the other the pundit class saying, oh, this is it, Scott, he's dead. He came right back, you know. And every single time they try to hit us with something, they're not getting the results from it that they were hoping. That PAC that it's like a pro-Israel PAC that just dropped to 700,000. Yes, they just dropped a huge ad buy. Bernie raised $1.5 million or 1.3, something like that, same day. You know, they're throwing these things at us that I think they figured would probably take us out, and it's not. And I think they're kind of saying, oh crap, you know, we didn't take this seriously enough. We really thought we were banking on some of these strategies working, and they're just not. I mean, if it was earlier in the primary cycle, maybe this Bloomberg gambit would maybe have the effect that they're wanting, but I don't know that I see that. I don't know what they think putting him on the debate stage is going to do.
I'm going to wrap up because we got to go to the canvas coming up. I know you guys got to knock on doors. I want to thank Emily Connor, Jeremy White. Anywhere people could follow you?
I'm on Twitter, Megaphone Guy, and on Instagram, I'm the Art Ninja.
I am on Twitter. I need to change that handle. It's Psyche1226, PSYCHE 1226. Also, you can look us up on Facebook. We're on Facebook and Instagram, Texans for Bernie. Shout out. Hello, guys. We're
Unofficial DNC.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we are also both on the unofficial DNC team. We put out some pretty fire memes, if I do say so myself. We're heavily engaged in the meme warfare, which the party is now beginning to realize has more of an effect than they thought. So, I also run the page Bernie Facts, where I put out researched information, facts on Bernie, which are helpful to combat some of these talking points they throw at him. So, yeah, that's on Twitter as well.
And you, our loyal audience, like I said yesterday, things are always changing when we're in the field. There's a schedule, but it goes up in the air as news changes. So definitely make sure you're on our email list, statuscoup.com. Enter your email so we could email you when we're live. We're also trying to grow our text list to try and get around some of YouTube's shenanigans. So text 474747. Once again, 474747. Type in COUP. You'll get added to our text list. It doesn't cost you anything. It costs us a whole lot of fucking money. Damn it, I demonetized myself at the end. It's like, by the way, if we get to 1,000 texts, do you know how much it's going to, if we get 1,000 of you to join the list, you know how much one text is going to cost us? $45.
Wow.
It's such a racket. But, unfortunately, we have to do it because YouTube doesn't notify people when we're live. I mean, maybe if we're lucky, 30% of the time, people get a notification right when we go live. So we have to do this. So you could help us. It doesn't cost you anything. Just text 474747, enter COUP. You'll immediately get added. We will not text you when we're going to the bathroom. It's only to tell you when we're live. So we won't bother you unnecessarily. And also, if you've been on the fence, get off that fence. Statuscoup.com/join. Sign up as a member for as low as 1 cup of coffee a month, $5. It makes a huge difference. We're at 800. However, I don't know what we are now. When I went live, we were at 878. So we want to get to 900 by caucus night, and then we got 1,000 within sight. And honestly, I don't want to steal from Bernie, but like We're not taking money from banks, fossil fuckers, big pharma, big real estate, Silicon Valley, any of the sleaze donors of the Dems or the Republicans. We do it a much harder way from you, ground up. And I know a lot of you are, splitting your money between Bernie and Tulsi and all the causes. So if you don't have it, totally fine. You could share, you could like, all those things. If you have $5 a month, though, we kindly ask you invest it in us. Statuscoup.com/join. We're going to go live again from this canvas, so just check back soon. And thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you.